Bob Probert's name still evokes memories of fearsome on-ice altercations, bloodied knuckles, and a larger-than-life persona that hockey fans both admired and dreaded. Throughout the late 1980s and 1990s, he established himself as one of the toughest enforcers the NHL had ever seen, a heavyweight fighter who patrolled the ice with ferocity and unwavering loyalty to his team. Yet behind the powerful image of a brawler who had few equals, Probert struggled with demons that plagued him away from the rink, including substance abuse problems, brushes with the law, and a constant battle to find personal peace. His life, equal parts dramatic and tragic, came to symbolize the dangerous intersection of professional sports, addiction, and the shifting role of the enforcer in hockey culture. Even to this day, fans recall the electrifying thrill of a Bob Probert fight, and they also reflect on how a man seemingly so strong could be so vulnerable in private. Born on June 5, 1965, in Windsor, Ontario, Bob Probert grew up in a working-class family not far from Detroit, across the river from the city whose NHL team he would one day come to represent. From a young age, he felt drawn to physical sports. He played hockey locally and quickly discovered that his size and willingness to battle for the puck made him an asset on the ice. He wasn't born with the finesse or skill set of a typical high-scoring forward, but he stood out for his readiness to scrap, an attribute that can hold considerable value in the gritty underbelly of junior hockey. Scouts soon took notice, especially when they saw he could also score timely goals and use his imposing presence to protect more talented teammates. By the time he entered the Ontario Hockey League, OHL, he had already built a reputation as an intimidating forward unafraid to drop the gloves against anyone foolish enough to challenge him. During his junior career, Probert had stints with teams like the Brantford Alexanders, Hamilton Steelhawks, and Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds. He never became a superstar goalscorer, but he honed his physical style, turning it into a calling card. Opponents learned that messing with Probert or his teammates was a shortcut to a bruising fight. Off the ice, he had a penchant for pranks, an affable side that made him popular in the locker room. When Detroit drafted him in the third round in 1983, they probably expected a serviceable grinder who could add toughness to their system. What they got was a player who would soon become the most feared enforcer in the league, capable of dropping even the biggest of opponents with a single punch, while also chipping in with surprising offensive contributions. But they also unknowingly inherited the seeds of the personal struggles that would unravel his life later on. Probert's rise coincided with a Detroit Red Wings franchise eager to shake off years of mediocrity. By the mid to late 1980s, Detroit was desperate to regain glory, and they had begun assembling a cast of players who combined scoring skill with gritty determination. Probert made his NHL debut in the 1985-86 season, although he split time between the Wings and their minor league affiliate. After establishing himself as a mainstay, he quickly formed a tight bond with another rugged player, Joey Kocur. Together, they were nicknamed the Bruise Brothers, a nod to the pounding they inflicted on opponents who dared to cross their path. Standing at 6'3" and well over 220 pounds, Probert was an imposing sight. But it wasn't just raw size that made him fearsome. He possessed a kind of fearless aggression and an uncanny knack for landing accurate, devastating punches in fights. Night after night, fans packed Detroit's Joe Louis Arena, waiting for the next Probert showdown. Yet to label Bob Probert as simply a goon does him an injustice. During the 1987-88 season, he posted 62 points, 29 goals, 33 assists, along with a staggering 398 penalty minutes, showing that he could be more than just a bare-knuckle brawler. He earned a trip to the All-Star game that year, an almost unthinkable achievement for a player whose reputation was built on fisticuffs. His skill around the net, willingness to screen opposing goalies, and surprising agility made him a threat in multiple facets of the game. At his peak, he was a power forward who, while not the most technically polished player, could still influence a contest in numerous ways, dropping the gloves, protecting star teammates, scoring a clutch goal, or hammering an opponent on the forecheck. Detroit fans adored him, seeing in him a blue-collar ethic that resonated with the city's working-class identity. But off the ice, Probert was fighting a different kind of battle, an escalating struggle with alcohol and drugs that began to cast a shadow over his entire existence. Well known for partying and enjoying the nightlife, he eventually fell into increasingly destructive habits. In 1989, his personal life came crashing down in a very public way when he was arrested at the US-Canada border for attempting to smuggle cocaine into the United States. This incident exposed his substance abuse issues to the world, leading to a conviction that involved jail time and resulted in Probert's deportation to Canada. He was banned from re-entering the United States except for NHL-related business, and he faced an uncertain professional future. Detroit stuck by him for a time, but the relationship grew strained as the team weighed his value on the ice against the chaos off it. The legal ordeal and subsequent media frenzy tarnished Probert's image. No longer was he just the NHL's most intimidating enforcer. He was also a cautionary tale about unchecked addiction and its repercussions. His time in prison offered moments of introspection, but even after his release, the cycle of substance use and attempts at rehabilitation recurred. The NHL mandated drug testing and counseling, and while Probert sometimes showed signs of progress, he often slipped back into old patterns. Many who followed his career wondered whether the physical toll of his role was driving him toward these addictions. He endured countless fights, broken bones in his hands, and physical discomfort that perhaps led him to self-medicate. Others theorized that the celebrity status and the adrenaline rush of hockey fights fed a party lifestyle he couldn't easily abandon. Despite these off-ice struggles, Probert never truly lost the admiration of his teammates. To them, he was a loyal friend who would go to war for anyone wearing the same jersey. Countless stories describe how Probert, even after a night of questionable decisions, was the first to defend his goaltender or star forward at the drop of the puck. NHL tough guys from that era, Ty Domi, Stu Grimson, Marty McSorley, spoke of Probert with a mixture of respect and dread, recognizing that in any fight, he was a real threat. Some said he was the hardest puncher in the league. Others simply noted that he never backed down, no matter the opponent's size or reputation. The code among enforcers was built on respect, and Probert exemplified it to the fullest. Whether he was playing for Detroit or later the Chicago Blackhawks, his readiness to answer any challenge never wavered. In 1994, after numerous ups and downs, Detroit decided it was time to part ways with Probert. The front office had grown tired of his repeated legal entanglements, missed practices, and other issues that stemmed from his substance abuse. The Chicago Blackhawks took a chance on him, signing him in the hope that he could revitalize his career and keep his personal demons in check. For a short while, it appeared the change of scenery helped. Probert turned in some decent seasons for the Hawks, though he never again matched the offensive production he had in his prime with Detroit. Chicago fans, much like their Detroit counterparts, fell for his brand of tough, hard-nosed hockey. The stands erupted whenever Probert squared off at center ice with a rival tough guy, and while the fights remained as brutal as ever, observers noted that Probert's physical health had started to wane. He'd taken countless hits to the head and fists to the face. The unseen damage accumulated, though fans were scarcely aware of the long-term risks enforcers faced. His personal life continued to be turbulent. He faced repeated DUI incidents and even spent time in substance abuse programs. The tension between wanting to be a dependable family man and the pull of addiction created a never-ending cycle of brief recoveries followed by relapses. In interviews, Probert was often candid about his struggles, admitting that once he went down that path, it was hard to stop. Eventually, in 2002, the Blackhawks parted ways with him as his performance dropped and his off-ice issues became more public. By this time, Probert's role in the NHL had largely become that of an aging enforcer, revered by fans for his earlier exploits, but no longer able to keep up with the faster pace of the modern game. The era of pure enforcers was beginning to wane, replaced by a league that demanded more speed and skill, even from bottom six forwards. After retiring in 2003, Probert tried to settle into life away from hockey. He made attempts to address his substance abuse more seriously, entered rehabilitation programs, and worked to mend relationships with family and friends. He found occasional public relations gigs, took part in NHL alumni events, and tried to embrace the role of a father to his children. Still, the old demons remained. Some days were better than others, but the internal tug-of-war rarely vanished. He had endured so many fights, on the ice and within himself, that he seemed perpetually caught between the desire to reform and the lure of old habits. He stayed connected with the hockey community, and plenty of fans still lined up for his autograph, recalling the nights he brought a different kind of excitement to the game. On July 5, 2010, Bob Probert died suddenly of a heart attack while boating with his family on Lake St. Clair. He was only 45 years old. The hockey world reacted with shock and sadness, remembering him as an iconic figure from a bygone era, a time when fights drew fans out of their seats and enforcers like Probert carried an almost mythic stature. His untimely death also rekindled discussions around the toll that repeated head trauma and substance abuse can have on athletes. Later examinations of Probert's brain showed signs of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, the degenerative condition linked to concussions and repeated blows to the head. This led many to wonder if Probert's addiction issues had been exacerbated by neurological damage. His story, therefore, became emblematic of the shift in hockey culture, prompting the league to reconsider the role of fighting and the need for better mental health and addiction support for players. Probert's legacy is complicated. On the one hand, fans revere him as one of the toughest players ever to lace up skates. His highlight reels of toe-to-toe brawls against the likes of Ty Domi, Wendell Clark, Craig Cox, and others remain some of the most watched fight clips in hockey history. He played in 935 NHL games, amassed 3,300 penalty minutes, and chipped in 163 goals, a testament to the duality of his skill set. He was voted to the All-Star game, stood up for his team, and shared the ice with legends like Steve Yzerman, Dino Ciccarelli, and Chris Chelios. For many Detroit and Chicago fans, he remains a folk hero, embodying the gritty determination that defines those cities. Even modern enforcers who grew up watching him speak of Probert with a kind of reverence reserved for legends. He truly was the heavyweight champion of the NHL. On the other hand, his repeated run-ins with the law, his struggles with alcohol and cocaine, and the heartbreak his family endured reveal a man beset by personal turmoil. No matter how invincible he looked in a brawl, he was vulnerable in ways that fans seldom saw. Probert's addiction overshadowed many of his on-ice accomplishments, and his name became a shorthand in media headlines for the perils of celebrity athletes who can't escape their vices. Even after his passing, stories emerge of near misses, chaotic nights, or tearful attempts at intervention by loved ones. His widow, Dani Probert, has spoken candidly about the difficulties he faced and her effort to preserve his memory, while educating people on addiction and player safety. Through her work, she underscores that Bob was more than just hockey fights. He was a father, husband, and a man who, despite repeated stumbles, never stopped trying to be better. That complexity is why Probert's story still resonates. The enforcer role he played so brutally well is nearly extinct in today's NHL. Teams now prioritize speed, skill, and disciplined play. Rule changes, concussion protocols, and heightened awareness about head injuries have curtailed the days when a single player's job was primarily to police the ice through fists and intimidation. Yet, as fans look back on that era, it's impossible to avoid the question of whether the culture contributed to Probert's downfall. The fights he was lauded for took a massive toll, physically and psychologically. The era itself, awash in a boys will be boys mentality, did little to address or mitigate addiction and mental health struggles. It's likely that if Bob Probert were coming up in hockey now, he would find more support structures in place. Whether that would have changed the course of his life is impossible to know, but it certainly prompts reflection on how the sport has evolved. For better or worse, Bob Probert's name is etched in hockey history. Younger fans stumble upon his fight compilations on the internet and marvel at the raw aggression. Older fans recall nights at Joe Louis Arena or Chicago Stadium, when the entire crowd stood in anticipation every time Probert lined up next to an opposing enforcer at a face-off. His tragic passing at 45, his history of substance abuse, and the revelations about potential brain trauma remind us that there is a profound cost to a life defined by violence. And yet, in the locker room, he was known as a gentle giant, a man who loved jokes, supported his friends, and did everything in his power to protect them on the ice. That duality makes his story so compelling and so heartbreaking. In the years since his death, the conversation around Bob Probert has gradually shifted from the sensational headlines of his fights and arrests to a more empathetic examination of the man behind the gloves. Documentaries and books delve into not only his achievements, but also the personal anguish that accompanied him. Hockey fans who once cheered his every punch often express sympathy for the struggles he faced. He has become a cautionary figure for players seeking to carve out a career by dropping the gloves. A symbol of an NHL era that celebrated violence without fully understanding the consequences. Meanwhile, the league attempts to navigate a new identity where fights are rarer, and the well-being of players takes on greater significance. Yet there remains a sense of pride among those who saw him at his best. For all his troubles, Bob Probert forged an unbreakable bond with the sport's faithful in Detroit, Chicago, and beyond. His brand of loyalty, never backing down, always standing up for teammates, defined the intangible code of hockey toughness. While fans today may debate the morality or need for fighting in the game, they also acknowledge that the toughness enforcers provided once filled a role within the culture. In that sense, Probert was unmatched. He was the man you wanted on your side when tensions boiled over. Perhaps no one else has so perfectly epitomized both the glory and the heartbreak that come from a career spent on the edge, dealing with pain in ways most of us can only guess at. Ultimately, Bob Probert remains a figure of legend. He left behind a complicated narrative that intertwines thrilling on-ice exploits with personal tribulation. Whether it's the memory of him standing toe-to-toe at center ice in Detroit, or the image of him wrestling with addiction behind closed doors, we're left with a portrait of a man who was both lionized and deeply troubled. His passing at a relatively young age ensures that questions about how his life might have unfolded will linger. Did the repeated head trauma accelerate his health issues? Could a different support system have saved him from addiction? Did the fights that built his fame also carve the path to his demise? The answers aren't simple, but each question underscores why Bob Probert's story extends far beyond the penalty minutes and fists that made him famous. Years after he last laced up a pair of skates, people still wear vintage Red Wings or Blackhawks jerseys with Probert's name on the back. They remember him for the improbable goals and the game-changing fights, for the intimidation factor he carried, for the raw excitement that accompanied each shift. They remember the news stories of trouble at the border, the arrests, the attempts at sobriety, and the heartbreaking conclusion. More than anything, they remember Bob Probert as an icon of hockey's past, a cautionary tale, a beloved teammate, and a complicated man whose roar on the ice was matched only by the silent struggles he endured away from it. His life offers a testament to the fact that in sports, as in any high-pressure field, it's all too easy to applaud strength while overlooking fragility. And in the end, even the toughest enforcer can be brought down by invisible adversaries, leaving behind a legacy equal parts heroic, poignant, and forever etched into the annals of NHL history.